But you do realize that in your definition of gender, you use the word gender 2 times. So you said that gender is a totality of objective gender and subjective gender. So how can gender be defined?
All right. No. Gender is, there's 2 types of gender.
Okay. So which one of those is true gender?
There's no, what do you mean which one of those is true gender? There's no,
if a woman if a woman is a gender, then there has to be one of those that is used to define what a gender is. But you've now
both of them can be different genders. They're different things.
Okay. So you think, so then a woman...
You can define woman objectively, you can define it subjectively. Those are different.
Okay. So then how would one person be a woman if there are 2, unless you're saying that there is not actually woman, but there is actually social woman and there is internal woman?
I'm saying, I mean, like, there's 2 different ways to use woman. Like, there's 2 different ways to define gender. So you're going to have 2 different ways to apply woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. But you do realize that, like, that's you're saying that there are 2 different words that you use the same word for. Because if you define woman,
woman is a gender. There are 2 different types of gender.
Okay. So a woman is a gender.
Yes.
There are 2 types of gender.
Yes.
Okay. And
you can have objective woman and you can have subjective woman. Those are different.
Okay. So then, which one of those determines whether you're a woman or not?
They both can determine if you're a woman. So all right, you can be a woman subjectively and you can be a woman objectively. Those are different things. They often overlap for a lot of people. Like, if you're a passing trans woman, you probably they overlap for you. But those can be different.
Okay. So in that,
like, there's no like, I want you to eliminate the idea of, like, which one of those is the true gender from your mind. They're both equivalent.
I feel like in this case, this goes towards my argument, which is that...
What do you mean it goes towards your
argument? Hold on. Well, let me explain real quick. Because if what you're saying is that there are 2 separate versions of the word woman, and both of them are completely different and essentially irreconcilable in certain cases.
They're not completely different.
I mean, they are. You've said that one is what your internal understanding of your gender is, and one is the external understanding of gender.
No, I didn't say that. No, I didn't.
You did.
You can't say it's your internal understanding of your gender, because that would entail an infinite regress.
You just described. Yeah.
Okay.
My chat is saying you definitely did do this, but
no. I definitely didn't. I'll read it.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can. I want to make sure that we can get the. I want to make sure we can get across this.
You can pull up my research doc. I have it right there. I'm literally just reading from it.
That's fine, Riley. Like, okay, there are 2 types.
Why are you talking down to me? You don't have to demean me.
I'm not talking down to you.
I'm literally trying to help you understand, like, a legitimate, like,
Riley.
I'm not trying, like, this is like the equivalent of arguing to someone whether or not 2 + 2 is 4. Right? Like, it is infinite. Like, what you are saying, like, just identifying as a woman is a woman, like, that is an infinite regress. There's no, like, buts about it. Like, that's what it is.
Yeah, but, like, we recognize that, like, tautologies are, like, what you're describing is a tautology, correct?
What do you mean I'm describing a tautology? I'm describing, like, math. Like, this is, like, basic logic. This is not, like, what do you mean I'm describing a tautology?
Is that not true? Is that not saying that a thing is not a tautology? Is that not correct? And the tautologies are not necessarily logically fallible. For example, A equals A. We recognize and acknowledge that A equals A.
No. When you have, like, a logical... All right, so hold on. I need to explain. God, I need to explain logic now. You cannot just say that
I'm gonna call this an end.
No, you cannot say... No, you cannot say...
Nope.
Wait, hold on. Don't interrupt me. No, I'm actually responding.
Wait.
Hold on. Why are you interrupting me? I know what you're saying, and I can tell you why that's not an accurate representation of what you're saying.
All right. So.
Okay. Are you gonna let me explain this? All right?
I'm not.
When you define what something is.
Not right now. I'm not, Riley.
Wait. Well, hold on. What do you mean you're not?
No, I'm not, because I can tell where this is going. You're like, this has gotten to a point where, like, it's gotten, like, super, super intense really quickly, and now we're getting...
Not listening to me. Riley, please. No, this is actually...
Riley, I have tried to talk...
Don't talk down to me. Why are you demeaning me about this?
I am not talking down to you, Riley. I'm simply trying to talk right now.
What do you mean? No,
Riley.
All right, you know what? Fine. I'm going to talk to you exactly the same way that you're talking to me. Okay?
Do you think that I'm
Mama, listen, do you think that I'm actually trying to harm you right now? I'm literally just trying to explain like a super simple mathematic concept to you. Like, why are you getting so heated about this?
Riley, I didn't do that to you at all. I'm in fact being remarkably calm because
you kept accusing me of being angry and being like,
no, I asked you if you were getting frustrated. Now, at one point, I will admit,
I said, no, I am getting frustrated because you are a public figure, and if you make a bad argument and other people adopt your bad argument, then you are going to. So you are
making that. This is why I said. So I was correct in saying that you're making the destiny argument.
What do you mean I'm making the destiny argument?
You're actually saying
you're a public
figure. Well, guess what? Right now, you are being cringe, and as a representative, a public figure. As a representative and a public figure who is representing trans people, by your own argument, your cringiness right now.
Wait, hold on. Wait. How am I being cringe? By pointing out how you are being clearly logically inconsistent? How the fuck is that being cringe? I'm looking out for people to make sure that they don't make dumb fuck arguments and lead themselves into bad situations you would lead them into.
Riley. This is exactly why. No, stop this.
I'm harming people when you are literally harming people and impugning me morally.
Riley, holy God. This is why I said that we should stop this like a while ago, like a significant while ago.
You aren't even like giving any effort to listen to my argument.
Riley, you're literally shouting over me while I'm trying to say things multiple times.
Not listening. No. You have
Riley,
not been able to incorporate anything that I've said so far. Not once. You literally are just like, oh, a logical regress. Oh, I just don't care about that. That just doesn't matter to me.
Okay, I've muted Riley. Just so you know, I have been trying to say something multiple times, just trying to get my point across that I think this is getting intense, and I have tried to ask Riley to let me finish a sentence. Riley has not. I've now muted Riley, okay? I don't like this either, okay? Now, I was very carefully trying to question some of these positions, and it got increasingly intense. And when I noticed that and said, hey, like, if there's no need to make a comment here like that, we calmed it down a little bit. But this is...
Find things according to like biological sex. Essentially, there's like two ways that you could interpret the literature. So what the literature is pretty clear on is that like bimodal distribution of sex, people exist on the spectrum of sex. Usually you want to focus on like the qualities that are sexed in a person rather than trying to sex an entire organism, right? So usually like people like based on totality of their qualities will fall into, based on those qualities, categories, which we'll probably define as like male and female. Obviously, there are people who don't fit into those. Trans people are a great example. But then there's a question of like, okay, so like, how do we define these smaller traits which individually make up some organism, right? Or big argument. Like, this is like the Steelman version of like the TERF argument I always hear is like the gametic entailment argument. TERFs will argue essentially because because someone can only produce one of two types of gametes, that inherently means that there's two gametes, two sexes, that's it, right? Like that's essentially what their argument is. And the response to this argument, and this is the one that I got from Avi, who is a doctor who actively studies biology, which is wonderful. Also apparently a vegan. I'm not going to debate him on that for a while. I'm kicking the vegan can down the road.
Fair enough.
Apparently that's what he's primarily known for. But anyway, so essentially the argument is that like Avi will not dispute that necessarily those individual things have a sex. But there's a difference between the gametes that an organism produces and how we categorize those gametes and how we categorize the organism doing the producing, you know? And so essentially like you can like and so like and again, I'm not saying that this is necessarily the greatest way to do this. You know, I take a scientific realist approach. I think that the best way of categorizing something is the way which gives the most consistent and reliable outcomes. And so if this is the way that we do it, then fine. If not, then, you know, that's subject to further discussion, and it's probably going to continue evolving in the literature as the literature continues to explore this idea. But essentially, like, you could either look at something. So then, like, if we bring this back into like the discussion of like, all right, penis, is it inherently like, is it a male organ or is it just like an organ? I I think that there you could probably fall either way. Like with the penis, it's important to remember that like penis, like all the genitals kind of like form from the same place. Like they start out essentially the same, and then through exposure to testosterone, usually is what, like if you just like leave a penis alone and you don't expose it to testosterone, it's probably just gonna develop into a vulva, or just not gonna do anything, right? Like it requires.
I mean, that would mean, by that argument, like, then would it not mean that you by this particular argument, then you could argue that a penis is a male sex organ, but you could not argue that a vulva is a female sex organ, because all humans, regardless of their genetic sex, always start with a vulva, because it requires the input of testosterone to even develop a penis in the first place.
I don't know about that, but I mean, like,
pretty sure that's the case.
Maybe. I have to think on that more. But essentially, like this, like these are the kind of issues that we come up with, right? So I mean, like essentially, when we're trying to say that, like, oh, a penis is clearly one of two kind of categories, well, it's like, no, I mean, you know, you could, like, because of the way that it develops, like, I think that there are a lot of places where you could say that, like, there are certain sex qualities, and if you want to say that's one, then sure. But I think that people assume that it's like this very strict binary thing with genitals, when you look at the way it develops, I'm not sure if it's as open and shut a case.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. I think it's kind of a silly argument to make. To me, it seems like that argument is functionally like arbitrary, and also so it doesn't give us anything. Like, we don't gain anything from calling a penis a male sex organ and a vulva a female sex organ. We don't gain anything from that. We could just call them penises and vulvas, right? Like, why do they need?
It depends on how we're using the term, like, male and female, right? So I mean, if we're using the term male and female to describe like different paths of sexual development, then it might give us utility, because it mean, like, basically it would be like, so like if we take the example of trans,
but by that same argument though, would that not mean that it would be okay for like trans people to be like referred to as like male then?
No. No. Like I'm very specific to say that, like, again, because of the fact that, like, the literature seems to be moving towards more defining qualities of a person with sex rather than an entire organism, then you wouldn't be able to define like a trans woman as like a quote unquote biological male, right? Because a trans woman, especially on HRT, now pre-HRT, it's going to be a bit of a harder argument. There is some evidence to be able to suggest that, like, there is still some kind of biological quality. I mean, like, this gets into the question of, like, what's the cause of gender dysphoria? What's the cause of people wanting to be trans in the first place? Like, what causes those mental functions which happen in the first place? There's probably something there. There's some literature to suggest that, like, the brain is
right. It's not,
well,
unless you're a dualist and you believe there's like, unless you believe that it's like a soul thing, that like you have a female soul, but I don't believe in that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not gonna believe that, but I mean, like, you want to be a little bit careful here, because you can easily get into like some trans medicalist arguments, because I mean, then then we are necessarily, I mean, like, not even technically, like, we are necessarily getting into questions of like, all right, so what does it mean medically speaking to be trans? So you want to just be careful, because oftentimes if you're not careful, then you can accidentally start like drawing lines. I don't know, like, you know, fortunately, like, people who are reasonably knowledgeable about like the about trans discourse are usually able to have like a pretty good head about these sort of things,
right? Yeah,
just because, like, logically speaking, I guess that the way I have like a Avi voice in the back of my head now, you could think of this in terms of like looking out for what would result, like a rule which would result in like in a reductio ad absurdum, right? Like, if you were going to propagate a rule, would that rule result in like outcomes that are clearly wrong, you know? So like with a lot of trans medicalist arguments, you know, you get into a question of like, all right, so what if you have a like, for example, if we define what is necessary, like required to be a true trans person is to have diagnosed gender dysphoria, that's going to have a problem, because that naturally means that you are going to exclude people who we probably would define as trans, but who may not have experienced gender dysphoria, or who may have not been sufficiently diagnosed with gender dysphoria.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, or who were incapable of being diagnosed, regardless of the fact that they're actually trans.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so like that's an example, and I mean like that's the easy argument to say like why a lot of trans medicalists are wrong, but that doesn't mean that there's not a different definition of what it means to be trans. It just means that we want to be able to have a definition which does not exclude people who we do not want to exclude, but also doesn't include people who we don't want to include. Right? We probably don't want to say that like, and this is also my take, and this is probably my spiciest trans take, but I think I'm pretty pilled on this or whatever.
All right, sure.
I don't think that we can just say anyone who identifies as trans is trans.
Why?
I think that if we naturally, I think that the reason why is if we go with that, then we get into it's a logical flaw. It's called infinite regress. Basically, like it's a logical fallacy to say that just saying that you're something equals being that thing. Now, I think that there's a definition of what it means to be trans, which is able to accomplish the same thing.
Okay.
Which is essentially like so for example, here, let me pull up like the definition that I have relied on, which seems to get me through most things, right?
Sure.
Usually what I look at is like objective and subjective gender. So like objective meaning the totality of your gendered expressions and how society reciprocates and interprets those. Okay. Combined with the subjectivity, like the totality of your mental processes, which motivates you to make those expressions, right? So for example, if you say, I am a woman, that is a gendered expression. That's an expression that you make to society. And if you are in a you're in a social space which recognizes that expression and acknowledges that to mean that you are a woman and treats you like that, then objectively speaking, you have met the criteria to be a woman.
So then,
right?
Should we not set that as the criteria then?
No. I would say that. Well, I would say that this is like this is like a good criteria, and also like we can test this against a lot of like a good way to be able to see if a rule like this or if a principle like this works is be able to test it, right? Because I think that like this is what we see, for example, in the two coolest examples I like are closeted trans people and Discord, because I think that Discord is cool. I think that like for example, let me ask you, why do we have gendered roles in trans-friendly Discords? Like, why do we have them?
I mean, because we have because our society and our language requires that we frequently use pronouns, and we create in order to facilitate comfortable use of pronouns, and we unilaterally agree to have, I mean, those of us are trans-friendly spaces, will have bots that will automatically allow you to identify which pronouns you prefer.
But I mean, like, if you go into an online space, like if you go into a Discord and you don't have a pronoun role, okay, and you never say what your pronouns are, you know, then I would say that there's no guarantee, or it would be hard. Like, people are going to be looking for ways or some kind of basis to be able to gender you, and hopefully gender you correctly, right? Like, hopefully people are going to be like conscientious and be like, oh, I want to know how to gender this person.
Right. But we don't, we obviously don't we don't want to leave that up to chance, because it's not fun for either party. It's difficult to try and gender someone based off of loose associations and assumptions. And we acknowledge that. And so therefore we use pronoun bots, because it's just simply easier and more functional for both parties involved to just allow people to identify as they please.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, I think that there's more to unpack there, right? Because I don't think that it's just the self-identification. I think that there's more to it than that, right? Because
I don't really think that that's so much the case.
No, well, sure. Can I explain this?
Sure, sure.
Okay. So I think that when you choose a gendered pronoun, or when you choose a pronoun role, right? What that comes up in, like the context that comes up in, is if you have someone who is interacting with someone else, and based on the totality of their interactions, cannot yet tell how to gender that other person. Why either the other person has not expressed what their gender is, either the other person has just been acting in a way that is neutral, or that has not given them enough information to be able to make a sufficient determination.
Okay.
And so someone will look at what other types of expressions that person is making. And in Discord, there's really not that many. You can have a PFP, but nowadays that can't tell you a whole lot.
Sure.
It can tell you sometimes a decent bit, but I mean, like, it's not necessarily determinative.
Sure.
And so, like, a really determinative thing that exists in online spaces is being able to look at pronoun roles. And if you look at someone's pronoun roles and you see she, her, that's a social expression that someone, and mind you, it's not like someone necessarily just chooses that just for the sake of choosing it, right? It's not like
you don't know that. You never can know that. That's
sure
it's impossible to know that. It's impossible to know. How could you ever know the reasons why someone else chooses whatever, like, role? Like, I mean, you run into the problem.
I mean, like, there's evidence to be able to suggest that, like, even if, I'm not saying that it's necessarily like, I think that there's enough evidence to be able to suggest, and I think that we can, like, match this against our own experiences, right? I think that this is probably consistent with our own experiences, right? Maybe. No one just chooses to be trans, like, in the same way that someone chooses what to put on, like chooses what to wear in the morning. Like, there is a choice which necessitates that outcome, right? Like, there is like, when someone makes the choice to come out as trans, it's not so much a choice to be trans, but rather a choice to express who they are, right? Like, I think that,
I mean, I think it depends on the person, right? Like, I think that would be largely true for most, like, binary trans people. But
are you saying, I'm trying to understand, because I mean, like, my understanding of just about every trans person is that experience is not a choice. It's an intrinsic part of who they are.
I mean, I don't know that, like, I don't know that I would make distinctions to that degree, because I don't think we can ever know. And so I don't think that for the purposes of categorization that it's mostly, like, mostly useful to worry about whether the intention is. Like, for example, like, I don't know. Okay, so I'm trying to think of an example of this. Like, is somebody who chooses to, like, wear gender like they would wear clothes, is that person's gender expression any less valid than someone who has some sort of dysphoria issue? I think that it's very hard to separate these things out, given how deeply deeply entrenched the concepts of gender roles are in our society, and how nonsensical they are. They're, like, highly chaotic. What's that?
No, I don't. But you have to be very careful, because I mean, like, so if we're throwing out the necessity for someone, like, if we're throwing out complete, like, hold on, if we're throwing out subjectivity, because that's what it sounds like. So we're just basing it off of. All right, hold on. I just need to clarify, because
sure.
I want to be careful. Subjectivity and objectivity are both very important to me, because if you don't have subjectivity, then that means that, like, let's say that, for example, we have a pre-transition trans woman.
Okay.
Right. Someone who presents guy completely.
Okay, sure.
Right. If you throw subjectivity out and you just rely on objectivity and the way that they express themselves as society and how society treats them, that's a guy. That's only a guy. There's only a guy there. All right. We don't want to do that. We don't want to say that.
I wasn't making that argument at all.
But if we throw out subjectivity, then that's essentially what we're left with.
Well, wait. I think there may have been a misunderstanding here.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm not saying throwing out subjectivity. What do you mean by that when you say that?
Subjectivity is, like, the internal mental processes which necessitate an expression of objective gender. Right? Because we can't just say that's, like, we cannot.
Well, I don't think there's such a thing as objective gender. I don't think that gender.
Hold on. Objective, I'm using. All right, hold on. Objective, I'll define objective.
Okay.
Objective, I'm using to mean how the average reasonable person in a space or society interprets the totality of someone's expressions to categorize into a certain gender.
So what you're saying is, like what people conclude you are.
Well, it's your expressions and how people interpret your expressions based on your expressions, right? Like, if I go outside and dress in a certain way, my expressions will be interpreted different gender-wise based on what different parts of the world I'm in.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, it's but I think that most people don't have a coherent set of rules for that. I think they just literally follow their emotions.
Well, I think that no, but that's why I'm trying to make it a reasonable standard, because it's not based necessarily on some kind of, like, hard set, like, criteria. It's based on how the average reasonable person in society interprets it, right? That's going to change all the time. That's going to vary from person to person. But overall, you look at like the average person in society, there's going to be like broad trends in what people expect, right? In America, kind of like Western kind of idea, you know, you have some broad trends like long hair, dresses.
Yeah. But I think those are like really like, I think those are incredibly fuzzy. Like in my experience as well.
It might be fuzzy, but we're talking about like broad averages, right? Like broad, and those can change over time. Those can be time and context specific, right? But like broadly speaking, we're just talking about like the average image of a woman in society, and that can change. And people like activists can push that meaning to change all the time. Sure. That's like a really important aspect of what a lot of like trans activists, not using that term disparagingly, but like actually, that's like a lot of like what the work in what they do entails is that they push the average reasonable interpretation of what it means to be a gender by virtue of their activism. A really good example is like normalizing the idea that a woman does not have to have a certain kind of voice, right?
True.
There was probably a point in history where the average reasonable person expected that a woman have a certain kind of voice or have a voice within a certain range of voices, right?
Sure. But, I mean, I think that still exists to this day. I mean, I get misgendered all the time based on that.
Well, I mean, I think that as time progresses and trans women become more normalized in society, especially trans women who have voices which are not conventional to how the average reasonable person expects for voices to sound, then that expectation changes to the point where now the average reasonable person does not necessarily require that as a sufficient or necessary condition to be categorized in what they define as a woman.
I think we're playing like a little fast and loose with those, but yeah, I see what you're saying. You're saying that this can be changed, but I guess I'm just a little lost as to what the like why any of this would matter with regard to what we decide like being trans means.
Hold on. All right, let me go with that. So it's necessary because so when we're bringing it back into what it means to be trans, well, I mean, I guess it goes to what it means to be a gender generally. Because if we're accepting that trans people are a gender which is contrary to the one that they were assigned at birth, then we need to be able to find what a gender is, because what a gender is necessary to understand. Like it's a categorization that's necessary to understand what it means to be trans. Because if you are gender contrary to what you were assigned at birth, then we need to know what a gender is. You know?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would argue that, again, like, I would point out that I don't think that, like, our society has consistent or sensical, even the average reasonable person doesn't tend to have consistent or sensical understandings of what gender or sex is.
I don't think that that's the case. I think that there are like broad trends. I don't think that everyone's idea of what it means to be a woman is exactly the same, but I think that there are like broad trends, right?
But when you have someone, when you do have
like a comparable idea of what a woman, like when you think woman, most people have like some vague ideas that come to their mind.
Sure, but
right?
So do people. But when you say a transgender person, they'd have that too. There's all kinds of like stereotypes and assumptions, and those vary greatly.
Well, sure, but I mean, like that's a matter not of like that's not necessarily an inherent flaw. That's just a matter of like activism to show other people that's a matter of like shifting the idea of what the average reasonable person believes, right?
Maybe
because like here's I guess like to clarify, in an objective sense, I think it's very important. Hold on, nothing about what other people think about me makes me a woman though. Well, I think that like what I'm trying to explain like objectivity. All right.
Yeah.
Because people don't. I'm trying to make sure that people understand like the term objectivity, and that's different from subjectivity, and that those are two different things, and that they have often clashes, and that they don't necessarily overlap, but for a lot of people that they do. And so like when we're talking about objectivity, right? When we're getting into this question of like, okay, so you have a trans woman. Let's say that we're a trans woman in early 2000s. Okay. Let's say that you're also a trans woman who did not have a ton of access to gender affirming care earlier in life. Sure. And so you go on through life, and then later on in life, you're like, oh shit, I'm trans, but also it's early 2000s. People are going to treat me shittily, but whatever. I'm going to fucking own it. I'm going to start going on HRT. I'm going to start presenting femme. Fuck boy moding. I'm just going to go straight into it, right?
Sure.
Now, I think that there is a really compelling argument that that person subjectively is a woman, right? They have taken a lot of materially important steps to, for example, like start identifying as a woman, to start expressing themselves as a woman, to start telling other people that they're a woman. Like they took those steps because they realized they had to do that. Like it's not just a choice. Like they realized that they were intrinsically a woman, right? But then when they go outside, they may not be treated as a woman because society is at this point, based on the average reasonable person's interpretation of what a woman means, they may go outside and they may not be treated as a woman. That is not necessarily, like that has nothing to do with their subjectivity, like with their subjective understanding of gender. And that's not saying anything negative about their subjective understanding of gender. Like subjectively, there is, like, they are completely 100% a woman, right? But there also is a meaningful understanding and being able to address the fact that like they're not treated as a woman in society.
Well, yeah, but right? I mean that's just passing, right? This is just passing politics, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean like that's changing, right? Because we're able to.
Well, yeah, we're changing passing politics, but we're not changing what it means to be a woman. We're just changing the politics of passing.
I think that we kind of are changing what it means to be a woman, right?
Maybe.
Like at least in an objective sense.
I would argue that like in an objective sense, like again, I would argue that in an objective sense, it's almost incoherent. There are tons and tons of
well, yeah, like, I mean, like in a sense, yeah, like gender is all societally constructed, right? But that means it's necessarily going to change over time. Like, sure, it's all incoherent, but there's some meaning to what it means to be a woman, right? Like being a woman means something. I think that something changes over time, but it means something.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean that's like saying
all right,
words have
just
meanings,
define for me. Hold on, I just need to make sure. Like, define for me what a woman is. I know that TERFs do this all the time. I just need to hear like. Just to understand, like, what is a woman?
Yeah, I think a woman is a person who identifies as a woman. Like, I literally think it's that simple.
No, you can't do that. That gets you a infinite regress. Like, it's a logical fallacy. You cannot just say that.
Well, yeah, but I think that identify like womanhood is a incoherent concept. That
no. I'm not hearing about incoherent. Like, you cannot just say that the definition of something is identifying as something. Like, hold on. Like,
I don't know. I think you can, because the fact that I think you actually can. Like, it's frustrating, but this is it's a limitation of language. This is it is a linguistic limitation. I mean, you can say it's a logical fallacy all you want, but like it's and I agree with you that the wording doesn't make sense. But I mean, we can get into fucking Wittgenstein if you want to. It always comes back to Wittgenstein, doesn't it?
Yeah, but like fine, like, you can bring it like
yeah, we can talk about linguistics. Like, the fact of the matter is that like what makes you a human? Like, we don't have any coherent definition for what really makes a human. We choose we decide what human means.
You can't just make human being a human. Like, you can't just say that X equals X.
I mean, right? I think that a woman is a person who identifies as a woman. I think
but you can't do that.
Wait, yes, you literally can. If that is Wait, yes, you actually can, because you're saying that that the state of womanhood is simply choosing to claim womanhood, saying I am a woman. There you are. There you have it. That is perfectly fine. That's like saying like it's an identifier. It's if you choose to take this title onto yourself, then you have that title. It is a free title to be taken.
Like, you need to be careful. This is literally so when people make the attack helicopter meme, this is literally the logic that gets you into the
Nope, actually it isn't.
Then how isn't then explain to me how that's different. Like,
wait.
I'm really trying to be like thoughtful with this.
Sure. I mean, it sounds like you're getting a little frustrated about it, but that's fine. Like, if you want to, like, I mean, I'm okay with like. What's that?
No. I mean, like, it is a little like, all right, sure, it is a little bit frustrating, because I mean, like, this, I care a lot about making sure that our arguments are able to stand up to scrutiny. This is a very
don't hour us. I'm an individual and you're an individual. I'm not going to be policed.
Okay, you are a representative. All right, you are acting as a representative of a larger community. All right, when I'm saying us, yes, like you are not just acting as an individual here.
Yeah, but yeah, actually, I mean, that is true. You sound a lot like Destiny right now, to be completely honest.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Hold on, no. Wait, why are you attacking me personally? I'm
not attacking you personally. I'm just pointing out that in this moment, like, you're saying, you're basically implying that if I have like a flawed argument, that I'm somehow misrepresenting the trans community, and I don't think that's fine.
No, hold on. Don't take my words out of context. I'm not saying that you're misrepresenting the trans community. I'm saying that because you're a public figure, I want to make sure that your arguments have strong validity.
I want to make sure your arguments have strong validity. I wouldn't want you representing us poorly.
I have done I can guarantee you, I have done a ton of work to make sure that they are able to stand up to scrutiny. I've gone against
likewise, me too. I'm also, I've been kicking at this a bit longer than you have too.
I mean, what is this supposed to be like a measuring contest? I'm not trying to make a measuring contest. I mean, I'm not trying, I'm literally don't make this into like a competition.
Wait a second, hold on. Let's take a second. You started getting worked up. I pointed out that this was becoming emotional.
Like the reason I'm getting worked up is because you're not listening to me. Like,
wait, hold on a second.
No. Can you define a woman? Hold on. Are you talking to me? Is Riley struggling with identity not being objective? No, you cannot. Do I need to talk about this? All right. Do people not understand this concept? X equals Y plus X. All right. Do you see a problem with that?
How do you define women?
X equals Y plus X.
X equals Y plus X. I don't see how this is coherent. Like, how does that tie back to anything at all?
All right, no, because this is what you're doing. If you say that being a woman, X, equals identifying Y as a woman, X, this is what you're proposing logically.
Let me ask you, how do you define woman?
All right, I will go through it again. All right. I define a woman as a gender. A gender is based both objectively and subjectively. Objectively meaning it's comprised of A, the totality of one's social expressions, B, the average reasonable person's interpretations of those expressions, and C, the average reasonable person's categorization of one based on those interpretations, and 2, subjectively, meaning it's comprised of the totality of one's involuntary thought processes, which lead one to make those expressions. That is in no way contradictory, like it completely avoids this issue, which is an infinite regress. Like, it's meaningless. This is logically meaningless.
Okay, so your definition is that woman is a gender, yes. And that a gender is defined by what other people decide you are and what you decide you are.
No. Well, I mean, it's defined based on first objectivity, which means, and I'll say it again, objectivity.
Okay, I get it. Like, you don't need to do little like.
Well, you asked me to clarify.
I'm trying to genuinely clarify, but you don't have to do the little snipies. Because I mean, if again, like,
wait, what little
like, I'll explain it again then. Like, that is like not like, you don't. I'm just trying to get where you're coming from. Like, you don't have to like,
Then all right, then please tell me. I'm not trying to be angry. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I like you. I'm trying to be fine.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
tell me where in any of my definition of what it means to be a gender there's any misunderstanding.
Well, I was doing just that. What I'm saying is that what I'm trying to ask is that if your definition is that a gender equals what society understands you as, which is your objective, and what? Okay, so then
that's not what I said.
Okay, explain to me again.
I said it's the totality of your social expressions, how society interprets those social expressions, and society's categorization of you based on those social expressions.
Okay,
that's objective gender.
So then, so then continue.
All right, and then you have subjective gender, which looks at the totality of your involuntary thought processes. Like, it's not just a choice. It's not just something that people do. Every trans person can have this. You can be non-binary. You can be literally any gender. All right, and as long as you have involuntary thought processes which motivate your choice to be your gender, then that's subjective gender. All right, you are that person. You are that gender subjectively. Sometimes objective and subjective gender conflict. Often this is the case for people who are experiencing dysphoria or who are in the closet, right? If you have a subjective understanding of gender, like if you believe yourself to be a woman, and yet society interprets your social expressions to treat you as a guy, you're probably going to experience gender dysphoria, right? That's often what it means to experience gender dysphoria, is that your understanding, your subjective understanding of your gender is different from how society is treating you, right? That doesn't make you less of a woman. That's acknowledging that society is not treating you in the way that you want them to interpret your expressions.
Okay, but you do realize that in your definition of gender, you use the word gender 2 times. So you said that gender is a totality of objective gender and subjective gender. So how can gender be defined?
All right, gender is, there's 2 types of gender.
Okay, so which one of those is true gender?
There's no. What do you mean? Which one of those is true gender? There's no.
If a woman if a woman is a gender, then there has to be one of those that is used to define what a gender is. But you've now
both of them can be different genders. They're different things.
Okay, So you think, so then a woman...
You can define woman objectively, you can define it subjectively. Those are different.
Okay. So then how would one person be a woman if there are two, unless you're saying that there is not actually woman, but there is actually social woman and there is internal woman?
I'm saying, I mean, like, there's two different like category ways to use woman. Like, there's two different ways to define gender. So you're going to have two different ways to apply woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. But you do realize that, like, that's you're saying that there are two different words that you use the same word for. Because if you define woman,
woman is a gender. There are two different types of gender.
Okay. So a woman is a gender.
Yes.
There are two types of gender.
Yes.
Okay. And
you can have objective woman and you can have subjective woman. Those are different.
Ah, okay. So then, which one of those determines whether you're a woman or not?
They're both they both can determine if you're a woman. So then, you can be a woman subjectively and you can be a woman objectively. Those are different things. They often overlap for a lot of people. Like, if you're a passing trans woman, you probably they overlap for you. But those can be different.
Okay. So in that,
like, there's no like, I want you to eliminate the idea of like which one of those is the true gender from your mind. They're both equivalent.
I feel like in this case, this goes towards my argument, which is that...
What do you mean it goes towards your
Hold on. Well, let me explain real quick. Because if what you're saying is that there are two separate versions of the word woman, and both of them are completely different and essentially irreconcilable in certain cases.
They're not completely different.
I mean, they are. You've said that one is what your internal understanding of your gender is, and one is the external understanding of gender.
No, I didn't say that. No, I didn't.
You did.
You can't say it's your internal understanding of your gender, because that would entail an infinite regress.
You just described.
Yeah, okay.
My chat is saying you definitely did do this, but
no, I definitely didn't. I'll read it.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can. I want to make sure that we can get the. I want to make sure we can get across this.
You can pull up my research doc. I have it right there. I'm literally just reading from it.
That's fine, Riley. Like, okay, there are two types.
Why are you talking down to me? You don't have to demean me.
I'm not talking down to you.
I'm literally trying to help you understand, like, a legitimate, like,
Riley.
I'm not trying, like, this is like the equivalent of arguing to someone whether or not 2 + 2 is 4. Right? Like, and it is infinite, like, what you are saying, like, just identifying as a woman is a woman, like, that is an infinite regress. There's no, like, buts about it. Like, that's what it is.
Yeah, but, like, we recognize that, like, tautologies are, like, what you're describing is a tautology, correct?
What do you mean I'm describing a tautology? I'm describing, like, math. Like, this is, like, basic logic. This is not, like, what do you mean I'm describing a tautology?
Is that not true? Is that not saying that a thing is not a tautology? Is that not correct? And the tautologies are not necessarily logically fallible. For example, A equals A. We recognize and acknowledge that A equals A.
No. When you have, like, a logical... All right, so hold on. I need to explain logic now. You cannot just say that
I'm gonna call this an end.
No, you cannot say... No, you cannot say...
Nope.
Wait, hold on. Don't interrupt me. No, I'm actually responding.
Wait.
Hold on. Why are you interrupting me? I know what you're saying, and I can tell you why that's not an accurate representation of what you're saying.
All right. So.
Okay. Are you gonna let me explain this? All right?
No, I'm
not.
When
you define
not
what
right
something
now, I'm
is.
not, Riley.
Wait. Well, hold on. What do you mean you're not?
No, I'm not. Because I can tell where this is going. You're like, this has gotten to a point where, like, it's gotten, like, super, super intense really quickly, and now we're getting.
Not listening to me. Riley, please. No, this is actually...
Riley. I have tried to talk...
Don't talk down to me. Why are you demeaning me about this?
I am not talking down to you, Riley. I'm simply trying to talk right now.
What do you mean? No,
Riley.
All right, you know what? Fine. I'm going to talk to you exactly the same way that you're talking to me. Okay?
Do you think that I'm...
Mama, listen, do you think that I'm actually trying to harm you right now? I'm literally just trying to explain, like, a super simple mathematic concept to you. Like, why are you getting so heated about this?
Riley, I didn't do that to you at all. I'm in fact being remarkably calm because you
kept accusing me of being angry and being like,
no, I asked you if you were getting frustrated. Now, at one point, I will admit,
I am getting frustrated because you're a public figure, and if you make a bad argument and other people adopt your bad argument, then you are going to.
So you are making that. This is why I said. So I was correct in saying that you're making the destiny argument.
What do you mean I'm making the destiny argument?
You're actually saying
you make an
you're a
argument
public figure. Well, guess what? Right now, you are being cringe. And as a representative, a public figure, as a representative and a public figure who is representing trans people, by your own argument, your cringiness right now.
Wait, hold on. Wait. How am I being cringe? By pointing out how you are being clearly logically inconsistent? How the fuck is that being cringe? I'm looking out for people to make sure that they don't make dumb fuck arguments and lead themselves into bad situations that you would lead them into. People make more arguments.
Riley, this is exactly why. No, stop this.
I'm harming people when you are literally harming people and impugning me morally.
Riley, holy God. This is why I said that we should stop this, like a while ago, like a significant while ago.
You aren't even like giving any effort to listen to my argument.
Riley, you're literally shouting over me while I'm trying to say things multiple times.
You're not listening.
No.
You have not been able to incorporate anything that I've said so far. Not once. You literally are just like, oh, a logical regress? Oh, I just don't care about that. That just doesn't matter to me.
Okay, I've muted Riley. Just so you know, I have been trying to say something multiple times, just trying to get my point across that I think this is getting intense. And I have tried to ask Riley to let me finish a sentence. Riley has not. I've now muted Riley. Okay? I don't like this either. Okay? Now, I was very carefully trying to question some of these positions, and it got increasingly intense. And when I noticed that and said, hey, like, there's no need to make a comment here like that, we calmed it down a little bit. But this is a little bit weird, and I don't understand. And I don't understand why I'm being talked to as though I'm causing some kind of problem. You're a public figure who needs to do this. This is silly. And I reserve the right on my own show to control what I engage in. Okay? Now, I agree that there are some differences. We might have different definitions. We might have different views on this issue. But that doesn't mean that you get to shout at me or shout down on me. That doesn't mean that you get to dictate what I do on my show. I'm on like hour 9 now of my show, okay? Now, we can go back and we can review this VOD in the future, okay? I'm going to unmute and see if we can come to some peace here, because this has gone way off the rails. And it's not something that I want to do. Riley. Hi. Okay.
So, I'm going to sit here, and I'm going to talk at this exact tone, and I want to just work this out, okay?
Sure.
I care a lot about this.
That's fine. I do too.
Okay, then. Can you please do me a favor, and I will do the same to you?
Mm-hmm.
Do not impugn my morality.
I didn't.
All right, it certainly came across that you did. So please, even if you believe that you didn't, please do not.
Sure.
Okay. So, what about what about logical regress? So, do you acknowledge that that's a valid criticism of the idea that just saying that being a gender is identifying with that gender? Like, do you understand why that might come across as a problem to me?
Yeah, I can see where that could be a frustrating thing.
No. Don't say frustrating. Do you understand, like, the concept of what a infinite regress is?
I mean, the idea that, like, that it's just like a circular reasoning or something along those lines? Or that it's arbitrary?
Like, well, I mean, like, do you understand, like, what it is?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've got the idea of what you're saying. I mean, I'm not immediately familiar with, like, the dictionary definition of the concept, but if you'd like, I can look it up.
Okay. Do you mind if we do that? I really would feel comfortable.
Yeah. Do you want to provide me the definition you're using?
I'll just Google it.
Okay. There we go.
All right, the first thing that came up was the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
Sure.
I'm looking at that. Are you looking at that?
No, but I'm listening to you. So.
Okay. It says, I'm just reading from the first paragraph,
Mm-hmm.
An infinite regress is a series of appropriately related elements where a first member but no last member, with a first member but no last member, where each element leads to or generates the next in some sense. An infinite regress argument is an argument that makes an appeal to an infinite regress. Usually such arguments take the form of objections to a theory, with the fact that a theory implies an infinite regress being taken to be objectionable. That was a lot. Do you want me to like explain what that means?
I mean, I think I've got the basic idea. I mean, sure.
Right, well, do you mind if we just like walk through it?
Yeah, go for it. Walk me through it.
Okay, so let's just take a basic formula. Let's say that x equals x plus y.
Okay.
Okay? Mm-hmm. That's the formula we've got.
Sure.
Okay. So if we have that situation, or I guess we have to make it, let's make it y plus x because it'd just be easier to write out. All right, what that means is that if we have x equals y plus x, that means that necessarily x can also equal y plus, and because x equals y plus x, that means that this would also equal y plus x.
Okay.
And then necessarily, we get into another problem because now we still have x there. So we can have x equals y plus parentheses y plus parentheses y plus x, two parentheses.
Sure.
Okay? And then we go beyond there. I mean, I hope that you see where this is going. You can just ...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand what you're talking about. Forever. Yeah, I get what you're talking about.
So now let's do some substitution.
Okay.
Woman.
But you do realize, though, that there is a significant difference between talking about linguistic meaning and raw logic, right?
Then this is logic, right? Like defining what a term means is logic.
Well, I recognize that. But
yes, so we were trying to define what a woman is or what a gender is. All right? So if we're going to say that woman equals substitute y for identification.
Okay.
Plus woman, well, that necessarily means that we have woman equals identification plus parentheses identification plus woman.
Okay.
Okay? And then, go on from there, woman equals identification plus parentheses.
No, I think this is, I don't think that this is an accurate representation of my claim.
No, when you say that
when I say a woman is anyone who identifies as a woman.
Yes. It's a woman. Woman equals identification plus woman.
That woman has no intrinsic definition outside of being an identifier. That's what I'm saying.
But we know. Okay.
Yes.
We know that
it's an identifier. It's a title. It has no other meaning.
No, we know that there's some meaning. We have literature being able to say what it is.
I disagree with that. I don't think that there's any other meaning.
Why?
I don't think that there's any other meaning besides.
No. All right. You understand what an argument is, right? An argument is an opinion plus evidence. So if you don't think it has any other meaning, what is your evidence that it has no other meaning?
Yeah, I can give you the example of that, which is that no person uses the same definition of woman at all. We all have.
I'm not talking about everyone using the same definition.
So okay, but are you going to allow me to see now? Now here's what's happened now. Now
I'm trying. Hey, did I?
Okay, I actually, I know. I let's have this conversation another time. Because,
wait, hold on. No, because
really the fact of the matter is, like,
why are you raising your voice?
No, Riley, you have literally
I'm
not
being as reasonable. No, I want.
You have literally not allowed me to talk. Every single time I try to talk, you have literally stepped in and interrupted me. And if you go back and you watch this segment back, you will see that I have literally not finished a sentence without you butting in and saying to do something. I'm trying to explain my concept of gender. And that doesn't seem to be capable in this conversation. And what it feels like is that now I'm being held hostage in a conversation that I don't really feel super comfortable with because...
Why don't you feel comfortable? I'm trying, how is my tone? Please tell me how my tone is bad. Please tell me how anything I'm saying right now is bad. I'm trying to be as...
Because I feel, and I could be wrong here, but I feel like there is rippling under the surface of your words, there is there are unspoken things. And that's a read. I mean, like, and I recognize that's a read, and I recognize that's a subjective read, but I have reasons to believe that that's the case. And certain word choices are throwing up flags for me that say that this is a significantly more emotionally charged conversation than I was ready for or was hoping to engage in. I recognize you might have some problems with certain definitions of gender. You might have certain problems with this, that, or the other thing. But
wait, why are you saying I have problems? It's not a matter of having problems.
Because you took objection to it, is what I mean. I'm sorry if the word problem is the wrong word.
Then I have objections to it.
Yes, but I don't think that it is. First of all, we haven't decided who's wrong yet because we haven't had the conversation. And
I'm trying to have the conversation.
Well, interestingly, as in the process of trying to have this conversation, I don't feel like I am able to actually engage properly because I've been interrupted a lot of times, a significant amount of times. Okay?
I will never interrupt again. I will sit here, and once you are finished speaking, then I will respond.
Okay. Conversation, yes, I do agree with you, hopeful that conversations are a two-way street. Now, what I am saying is that I don't think that most people, including most trans people, have a coherent definition of gender. I don't think that gender has a consistent definition. It is a completely and utterly social construct. And personally, I don't put a whole lot of value on gender. In fact, I'm a gender abolitionist. I believe that in the long run, we will probably never use gender in the long run. No, that's probably going to take a while for us to get there. The reason why I believe that is because I don't believe that you can easily suss out a objective definition of someone's gender. And I think that trying to do so leads to some very troubling societal outcomes. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think that there is that trans people have a valid complaint when they say, or when the words that they are using, I think that we are limited, most trans people, I think, are limited by our linguistics, that we only have so many words to use. We only have certain societal understandings. And so we say, I'm a woman or whatever. I don't think that, I think that is how we identify how we wish to express ourselves. But that doesn't really mean that there's any intrinsic meaning to being a woman. It is what a woman is, what is a collection of completely chaotic factors that nobody agrees on. No two humans agree on what a woman is. And in fact, you alluded to this previously in our discussion. So the reason why I come to this conclusion is that the reason why I think it is perfectly fine to acknowledge that anybody who uses the term woman is, for all intents and purposes, a woman, is because it is it is not an objective term. There is no specific thing that any one person is referring to, but a loose collection of traits which aren't consistent from person to person. And as a result, I don't think that we should hold these things to particularly strong standards. And I disagree very strongly with your previous allegation that this somehow leads to an attack helicopter argument, which I do not believe is the case. However, I do think that there is risk in the opposite of attempting to boil down and define some sort of objective or singular concept of gender, because I don't think that anybody really has a single concept of gender in their mind. Does that make sense?
I understand your arguments. Can I respond then?
Sure.
Some things? Sure. I will try to build a bridge, but I also have meaningful concerns to address. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you said that the reason that you think that anyone who uses the term woman is a woman is because it's a non-objective term. Mm-hmm. There's no specific thing people are referring to, mm-hmm. and that they're referring to a series of traits that varies from person to person. Did I quote you correctly?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Okay. Yep.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. When I say objective, what I'm referring to is not a single unified collection of like not like a single solid checklist that you must meet all of these things in order to be woman. What I'm referring to, and I'll say it one more time because this seems to indicate that there may be a misunderstanding. I'm referring to how the average person in society, and we're constructing a hypothetical average person. Okay. And when we're saying society, we are taking a either larger society or maybe a smaller group or a culture. We are taking a group of people, like we're taking the average person from a larger group, and we are pulling them on seeing what traits that person would define as being sufficient or being identified as a woman. And then we look at the average of what all people in that group define to be that category at a given time, which can change over time, which can change over cultures. And that's what we would generally take to define as a certain gender. Gender can be anything. You could have people construct genders that are entirely different from men and women, as long as it is what is broadly defined within a group to exist at a given time, based on a series of qualities that the group has, then gender. So I'm not sure if I necessarily disagree. The thing that I do seriously, and this is like, I'm going to ask this, and I want like a serious answer. If just identifying as a gender, if just identifying with a quality makes you a quality, then like you said that this isn't the attack helicopter, right? But like, why is that? Like, if you say that just identifying as something makes you that thing, then the problem with me with making that the only don't give like small like asides. I stayed quiet.
I was literally just stating that I think you've got something wrong in my argument.
Okay, well then let me finish the statement, and then let me finish. Okay, I waited for you. Okay, so if all that's required to identify with, to be a gender, is to identify with it, that seems to be a problem because there seems to need to be something else, whatever that other thing is, something else, or else people could identify as anything and they would be anything. I obviously do not believe that. That is what is very troubling about this because, in my opinion, there has to be something else, whatever that something else is, to distinguish self-identification as gender from other things. Does that make sense?
Yes. But I don't think that you're categorizing my understanding of gender correctly because I don't believe. Well, that's fine.
Just tell me why.
The idea that that identifying something as an attack helicopter, I don't know. Like, this is a pretty significant difference between something like gender, which, in my opinion, can only exist among sentient beings as a part of a social contract. Hence, why it's a social construct. Versus an attack helicopter, which is not a sentient object, cannot self-identify, and can therefore only be objectified, can only be treated in the objective. You don't get to decide who's a woman. You do get to decide what is or what isn't an attack helicopter, because an attack helicopter is not an agent. See, yeah, what we're encountering is a linguistic.
All right, then I'll change the attack helicopter. All right. I'll use a different example.
Sure. Pick another example. And
let's say if someone self-identifies as Jesus Christ of Nazareth.
Okay.
All right. They self-identify. They believe genuinely that they are Jesus Christ, that they are born and risen from the grave, that they are literally Jesus Christ of Nazareth. They identify with that. They believe themselves to be that. Are they Jesus Christ?
Are they Jesus Christ?
Are they the literal Jesus Christ? We're not talking about like we're talking about like literally Jesus Christ from the Bible.
No, because Jesus Christ of the Bible is an object.
Wait, hold on.
Jesus Christ of the Bible is an object. Linguistically, Jesus Christ does not exist at all to us. We're speaking of Jesus Christ as the object, as the historical figure that we understand and can identify. You see?
That's an individual, not gender, though. Okay, so then let me.
Yes, but we're talking. Yeah, you're jumping from something that is an identifier, like for example, I am a woman, which I think is a very, very, even you agree with me. You even said you agree with me that it's an incredibly difficult thing to define what woman is because there's no consistency across time and space. Not at all.
No, I didn't say that.
You did, but.
No, I didn't agree with your with your elaboration.
If tomorrow I told you, hi, my name is Jesus of Nazareth, are you going to say, no, that's not your name?
I'm going to say, do you mean that's your, like, are you named after the person, or like, are you saying that you're actually Jesus motherfucking Christ?
Well, but those are very different things, right? Because a name is something that you can declare. I can tell you my name is anything.
Yeah, but we're talking
and we don't
about
have
a person
rules.
who identifies as the person.
What's that?
We're talking about someone who identifies as the person, not just with the name. Like, they believe themselves to be Jesus of Nazareth.
Yes, but they are making an objective claim. They're making a claim about an object. They're saying, I am the historical Jesus Christ of the Bible. We can go, wait, hold on a second. Because when you think of Jesus in your mind, we have a specific person, structure, time, place, set of features that define Jesus Christ, the object, right?
Okay.
So Jesus Christ didn't declare himself. Jesus Christ didn't declare himself as Jesus Christ of the Bible of Nazareth. He lived a life, and now he's been written down in books, and we have codified what defines Jesus Christ of the Bible, and that's how we identify Jesus Christ of the Bible. So someone else who doesn't match the object that we've constructed linguistically, Jesus Christ, we can say, well, no, you're not, because we know that Jesus Christ of the Bible is defined as these things. But if somebody says, my name is Jesus Christ of Nazareth, you can't really tell them, no, it isn't, because you get to define what your name is. That is how names work. You get, unless you would argue that people should be able to have objectively assigned names by somebody else, I would think that's silly. And I believe the same thing about gender.
Yes. All right, then I will use a different example.
Sure.
All right, because it seems to be like, for me, now we seem to be indirectly defining what a gender is beyond just identifying as something. Because if you now we have moved beyond, so it's not just, so gender is not just identifying as an object or a historical person. Okay, so then what about identifying as the president? I self-identify as the president of the United States. Is this not a person or a social categorization of someone?
I would agree that it's a social category. Okay, we can go all the way through to say all things are ultimately social categorizations because that's how language works. But if we're not going to go that far, making a statement, a claim of I am the president of the United States, we can check that against the linguistic object, the president of the United States, and go, well, they don't meet the category. They don't meet the category that we decide collectively is the president of the United States. So obviously, you could say that, but that would not be taken seriously because it doesn't match the object that we have constructed as the president of the United States, which, as it turns out, is a pretty clear definition. Like, in order to be the president of the United States, you need to have done such and such things. There's a whole bunch of rules that we use to define who the president of the United States is. In fact, we have a whole lot of rules for that specifically to avoid things like what would happen in medieval times, which is, there's a legitimacy crisis because how you define who the king is isn't necessarily clear. We have a very clear definition of who the president is so that people can easily identify what the president is. But gender is not the presidency.
Okay. So, all right. So there's a couple things there.
Sure.
So first, I want to hold on to the idea. So you agree then that someone who says that they are the president, who is not the president, is wrong about that self-identification. Like, if I were to say right now, I'm the president of the United States, you would say, I am wrong by that criteria you've set out.
Yes, because being the president is not a self-identification.
Okay, then let me ask you.
It isn't a matter of self-identification. Other people define you as the president of the United States.
Then let me ask you this. Can a trans person be wrong if they self-identify as a gender?
No.
Okay. The next logical question.
Sure.
Let's say that we have a trans person who is pre-transition, does not know that they are trans. They self-identify as a man.
Okay.
Are they wrong?
No. No, they're not. Because that is their understanding of their gender at the time, and it is their right to declare their gender. Now, I lived my life pre-transition as a man because that was my understanding of my gender at the time. And while I do think that we're incredibly limited in how we talk about these things, because obviously I transitioned, and I do identify with the term woman, and with pronouns she, her, and with femme aesthetics in general, I don't believe that it is very easy for us to talk about these things because we don't have very good rules about them. And so my argument is that with regard to gender, functionally in our society, gender is incredibly abstract. It's very, very personal. So I don't see how there is, in fact, I think we solve a lot of problems by simply allowing people to identify as whatever gender they so please, whatever pronouns they so please, because we can acknowledge that gender is highly, highly abstract. There are no set rules for it. Nobody agrees on the rules for it. And therefore, we may as well treat it as an identifier. And if people want to pursue HRT, we should also allow them to do that for a separate reason.
This isn't, I mean, this is all great. I understand this. There's a problem at the beginning. I understand all that you're saying, and it's taken well. There's a problem early on.
Okay.
So the person, I want to return to this hypothetical because
Sure.
this is very important to me. Okay. So this person, pre-transition trans woman, self-identifies as a man.
Yep.
So that person to you is a man. I'm asking this because there's more I want to elaborate on.
To me, that person is a man?
To you, that person is a man.
If they tell me they're a man, then sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then the follow-up question is being trans just a personal choice?
I mean, I feel like that's the wording there is a little bit like...
No, I mean, like, that's the natural... Because, I mean, I gave you the facts
well, I mean,
to be able to say that person is intrinsically trans.
It's a personal choice in the same way that choosing to come out as gay is a personal choice.
But why are they trans?
But the thing is, like, being... Well, wait, why are they trans?
I need a very specific answer to this question. This is the most important question of all this.
Sure.
Why, like, is being trans a personal choice? Yes or no?
Is being trans. Depends on what you mean by being trans.
All right, then in any way that you choose to
wait. Well, here's another question. Do you believe that non-binary people are trans?
No. Do not ask. And yes, I do. But no,
why?
I need you to answer. Yeah, because I have a consistent definition. Do not change the subject. Do not pivot away. I need you to answer.
You don't
this
get
question.
to. Excuse me.
No.
Don't
I asked
do
you
that.
The question. No, I asked you the question. I need you just answer this question. All right, I asked you.
What are you trying to angle for, like a gotcha here or something?
No, I'm not. This is just very important. Is being
why
trans,
is it important?
And you can answer it however you want.
No,
you can answer
Riley,
however you want. I'm not trying to pin you in a box. I'm not trying to do anything bad. I just need you to answer this one question. Is being trans a choice? You can answer it however you want. I'm not trying to pin you in a box. Do whatever you want with that. Just give me like at least somewhere in your answer, yes or no. Is
being trans a choice? If you mean, but when you say by being trans, if you mean the state of leaving the gender that you were assigned at birth and changing to another one, no. It's a choice to pursue that, yes. But in being that, no, that is not a choice. You are who you are, just like you don't have a choice in being human, or you don't have a choice in being what personality you are. Now, the steps that you choose to take in affirming or in realizing your transness, those are choices, of course, and
yes, I'm with you.
Sure, and they are things that I think can be incredibly beneficial, but I think that the idea of being trans is not really like I feel like there's like a linguistic problem in that sentence.
But I mean, like, we agree, like, yeah, like, I can agree with you, like, all the choices that someone makes, like, all or like all of the choices of how to pursue transition or how to present yourself, like, yeah, those are all choices. But like, being trans in and of itself is not just a choice, right? Like, that's what you said. Like, just the fact, like, the state of being something which is contrary to what was assigned to you at birth, right?
No, I don't think that would be a matter of choice. No. Like, I don't think you have any choice over whether you are, but that's also how we define transness, right? Because we define being trans as a thing. And so I would argue that you don't have a choice in being trans. If you find out one day, oh, I'm not happy living as the, gender and being perceived as the gender that I was assigned at birth, you don't have a choice in that. You are trans there. So no, I don't think that's a choice.
I just want to take this. So we agree that there's something more to being trans than just the choice of saying, actually, here, I'll paint it another way. So let's say that we have someone, let's say that we have another hypothetical person.
Okay.
Who does not have those internal mental processes, whatever they are, but does not feel that same need to identify as something that was contrary to what they were assigned at birth. Okay? Can you imagine, like, are we on the same, like, we can imagine this person.
You're saying that someone who doesn't have dysphoria or something?
Basically, or whatever we want to define these mental processes as. We can just label them arbitrary. We'll call them X, mental processes X.
Well, I mean, I would argue that it's incredibly hard on a philosophical level to litigate dysphoria.
No, I'm not trying to litigate dysphoria.
You kind of are in a certain sense, and the reason why I would say that is that, like, while I could say that, well, surely, like, somebody who's non-binary doesn't, maybe, a non-binary person who doesn't choose to pursue surgery or HRT might not have dysphoria in the same way that we would categorize as, like, clinical dysphoria, but something nonetheless motivated them to no longer identify with the gender that they were assigned, right?
Right.
Which
I agree.
May be a form of dysphoria. Like, I mean, it just depends. It may not meet the criteria of dysphoria, but I don't think that dysphoria is necessary for someone to be or clinical dysphoria is necessary for someone to be trans.
No, I agree. I completely agree. I agree with all that. I don't want to, like, I agree with everything that you just said.
Okay.
I agree that someone doesn't need dysphoria to be trans. I just want to imagine, like, we have to explore this because this is kind of, you're wondering why I was heated earlier. This is the reason why. Okay. So I just want you to just give me your word right now that you'll just hold on to me for a little bit more. All right. It's very important to me. I care about you. All right. I genuinely want us to reach somewhere.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's imagine. So we already established that, like, trans people generally have some mental processes which motivate them to identify with a gender that is contrary to what they were assigned at birth, and that is not a choice, right? We've already, like, that, whatever those mental processes are, not necessarily dysphoria, but whatever those are, we just know that those exist, right?
Yep, something exists that motivates them. Yep.
Okay. Let's say that we have a person who does not have those mental processes, all right? And let's say that person, let's say that they were assigned male at birth, and that they make the statement, I am a woman. Is that person a woman?
Yeah. Yep.
Here's the follow-up question then.
Sure.
Okay. So, does that mean that person, let's say that person, let's elaborate more on this person. So that was hoping for a bit of a budge there, but okay.
Why would I budge on that? I haven't. Okay, go ahead.
Well, here, all right. No, I had to think of another question. So here's the follow-up question. Fine. Let's say that person internally identifies as a man.
Okay.
They have none of the mental processes which motivate someone that we already talked about to be trans.
Okay.
Does that mean that person, if they say that they are a woman, is wrong?
You mean if they're like lying about their own self-identity?
Yes.
Well, they would be lying about it. So
but does that mean that they are wrong?
If they are acknowledging with their own self-identity that they are lying about their self-identity, then by definition, yes, because they don't actually believe that they are a woman. They are declaring that despite their own knowledge that it is not the case. So that would mean they are wrong. Them personally on this particular situation, because we've come up with a hypothetical in which somebody knows that they're not a woman. They knows that they're not, that they don't identify with that term at all whatsoever. And they're just saying it just because. So,
okay.
Yeah, sure. But I think that that's, I don't think that there's any way that you could ever, that would ever be relevant in any social aspect whatsoever.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, then let's change around the hypothetical.
Okay.
Let's say that instead of this person not having those qualities, let's say that they do.
Okay. So they experience dysphoria?
No, not necessarily. Whatever the mental processes are that motivate someone to identify as trans. Like the ones that we talked about earlier.
Oh,
like
okay.
So processes X.
So we're gonna call this non-clinical dysphoria, subclinical dysphoria, whatever. Just dysphoria as a general.
I wouldn't call it dysphoria,
okay.
Just because the literature
discomfort. Then let's put it that way. Discomfort or desire to not be their core, their assigned gender.
Sure.
Okay. So somebody has the desire to not be their assigned gender.
Okay. And let's say that person says, so let's say that this is like an AMAP person. They're internally, they believe themselves to be a woman. They want to be a woman. They are closeted.
Sure.
They say that they are a man. Are they a man? Or are they wrong about their gender?
Well, they're not. I mean, I think that using the term like, are they wrong is kind of is a little bit leading here. I would say they are lying. Yes, they are lying. But there's a purpose for that, right? Because if they're closeted, they're trying to keep it a secret because there might be social repercussions. They know they're lying. They're just lying for a reason.
Sure.
Right. So I don't think they would be wrong. That implies that sort of wording implies, in my opinion, like, I don't know, like that they're flawed.
If they say that
they're lying for a reason.
All right. If they say that they are a man, that is not representative of who they are.
That's correct, because they are lying. We know this. This is the same. Yeah. There's no. Yeah.
Okay.
You've stated that they're lying. They're not telling the truth about what they actually identify with. So, would they be wrong about themselves? I mean, you could put it like that. I don't think it's. I think they know who they are, and they're lying tactically. And I think that there's, we could talk about that, but for the purposes of this, I don't think it's. I don't think the wording is. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So if that person expresses to other people that they're a man, like, let's just be clear then.
Okay.
So there's more to being a gender. I think, like, I'm really trying to make this leap here. There's something more to being a gender than just saying that you are a gender.
Well, okay. I mean, I would say that then just saying it, but I don't know if that was the exact wording I used at the beginning, but that was, I assumed that you understood that means, like, honestly saying that. If you're saying something, vocalizing something that you honestly believe. So yes,
okay.
In if we're going to say, like, obviously it's not literally saying the words that makes you that thing necessarily, but it is identifying with it. It is deciding in your mind that I am this thing that makes you that thing.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
And we can elaborate on that even a little bit more.
Sure.
Right? Because you can have someone. So, I tend to agree with the idea that. Hold on, someone's asking, do you want to put a print on? No, we're close. We're in a good direction. Okay, so we can add on some more qualifiers, right, to what it means to be a gender, right? It's not just identifying, right? There's also like a degree of pull up mine. There's a degree of genuinely believing your identification, right?
Yeah, but I don't really think there's much of a distinction there. Like, I don't think there's much of a distinction between like identifying a way and genuinely believing that. I think that's mostly just a semantic or linguistic difference. I think those are mostly the same thing. And I think that in the situation, what's that?
Well, how are those meaningfully different?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think they are meaningfully different. I think that identifying as something, I mean, you can't, like, we're getting to the point of whether you can lie to yourself or not, and I think that's, like, really hard to do, like, hard to determine. I don't actually know if, like, we would have to have a conversation about consciousness, and I don't think there's much we can actually do about consciousness because we don't understand human consciousness yet, so there's not much of a progress we're going to be able to make on that. However,
I'm not sure if
do I think that, like, somebody identifying as X, when I say somebody identifying as X, the assumption is that that when they say identify, this is their internal process. Now, when I mean when somebody identifies themselves to others and engages in a social thing, when they say I am a woman, of course they could be lying about that. I mean, if they're closeted and they're actually, and they're telling the world they're a woman, but they actually they see themselves and identify as a man and they wish to transition to a man. I mean, we wouldn't hold that against them because there's a reason for that, right? Because of all kinds of rules that we have on that. But obviously what we've been talking about here presumably is the internal processes. So I do believe it's possible for you to lie about how you identify, but that doesn't necessarily, but it is not, in my opinion, it is not the public declaration of your gender that makes you the gender. It is your internal conclusion that concludes your gender.
Well, I mean, like, I agree. I think that we are able to reasonably suss out if people can lie to themselves. I mean, like, this is something that I would say is easily observable in the trans community. There are plenty of people who are trans who experience feelings or thought processes which earlier in life they may not be able to understand, but then later in life, when given the proper ability to understand those involuntary internal thought processes in the way that, like, you learn a new concept and it helps you understand a large body of work that you may not have, that it helps you understand, like, an entirely new range of concepts that you weren't able to put words to before, like stochastic terrorism. Learning that concept and then being like, oh, I didn't know how to be able to describe this phenomenon I have observed, but now I can describe it. And now I have all these ways to be able to describe these things that I had wanted to describe, right?
I mean, but we're more or less describing the phenomenon of self-exploration. I don't know that it's like, I don't think that, like, I think we run into linguistic and conceptual issues when we start to ask whether people can, like, meaningfully lie to themselves, because I think,
I mean, like, this,
well, because, like, I mean, think about it this way, like, was I lying to myself when I didn't have the words to describe what being trans was because I didn't, like, no, I don't think so. But can people be in, like, what's that?
Well, my question is why because I'm trying to figure out like what being trans is. And if it's not, or actually I should rephrase this. There's also another problem. If being trans is just, because it seems like there's an issue where if we have it where it's just a personal choice, we run into a lot of other issues really quickly.
Like what?
Why do trans people deserve civil rights and recognition?
Oh, now we've changed the framework because...
No. But I'm saying, like, why does any group deserve special recognition? Why do you deserve to be recognized as a group at all? Why are we not advocating for furry rights unironically, like actually unironically?
I unironically advocate for furry rights. Absolutely. Were you not being ironic earlier? Like, I unironically advocate for furry rights. I would literally fight for furry rights. Same way as I would fight, I can tell you right now, I would die for AI rights. If we ever invented a robotic intelligence, I would die.
Wait, hold on. Those are not equivalent. Like, if we're able to, like, the idea to choose to identify with a group that does not require inherent identification, like, that's, from a legislative perspective, the argument for why trans people deserve any rights usually has to naturally come back to, it's not a choice, it's who we are.
Well, okay, but what you're elucidating here is a issue of political expediency and not one of truth. Because, for example, I will give you an example of this from the very history of trans people itself, which is that it used to be the go-to line was for trans people to argue that they were X trapped in X body, right? And the reason for that was because it was politically expedient to essentially play on the idea of a soul, whether you believed in a soul or not, and argue that you were a female soul trapped in a male body. That was politically expedient. But we can acknowledge that that's probably not true, right?
All right, hold on. Can I ask you another question then? I just really need to ask this.
Sure.
Is there any meaningful distinction between the way that a trans person self-identifies and the way that a furry self-identifies? Is there any meaningful difference between those two things?
Between the way a furry self-identifies and a trans person self-identifies?
Yeah, a furry self-identifies as a star, wolf, whatever.
Well, okay, wait. I think you have the wrong...
with that persona. They believe they identify with that persona.
Wait. Hold on a second. Are you confusing furries with otherkin?
No, I'm actually...
Are you sure?
I mean, like, I'm pretty sure that either of them work. But I'm specifically talking about furries. Like, I'm having furries in my mind right now. Like, okay. I'm specifically thinking about furries.
So, before we go further, I have a question for you. What is, in your mind, what defines a furry?
Someone who has a persona. All right, some people are saying that not all furries have personas. Okay, yeah, well then let's talk about furries who have personas. All right, okay, well, let's limit it down to just furries who have personas. Let's say, like, a furry who has a persona, it's like fully developed. It's someone, it is like an extension of self in some way. Like, it has a name, has a fleshed out character background. Like, they identify with that character. Okay. Is there any and, like, let's say that we're also talking about someone who, like, puts on the fursuit, goes to, like, a furry convention, and they wear it around and they're in the fursuit. All right. Is there any meaningful difference between... No, I'm not talking about otherkin. Stop talking. Everyone's thinking I'm talking about...
I mean, because it does sound a little bit like there's a bit of a misunderstanding, but I could be wrong.
No, I'm very specifically trying to talk about furries. So I just want you to answer the question. Is there a difference between someone who has, like, a fully developed persona, they put on a fursuit, they identify with that persona, all right, and a trans person, a trans woman who says that they're a woman?
Oh, for sure. Obviously. They're completely different things.
Okay, why are they
totally different things? A fursona.
No, why?
A fursona is a character that you make, that you create, and that you pretend to be. I don't know of any furries who believe they're their fursona at all. I've never met a single furry like that. Most people, that's a character, like you would play a character in ESO. It's a vessel that you're able to insert yourself in to, put on a mask and have a cathartic experience of playing as somebody else. There is no, there is an obvious difference between that and a trans person. Yes.
Okay, people are saying that I'm thinking of otherkin. So is there any meaningful difference between the way that an otherkin identifies and the way that a trans person identifies?
Yeah, absolutely. Because once again, I mean, now, of course, this might change with some future developments in the understanding of consciousness, but at least how this argument would have to be structured. So I may need to readdress this argument in the future. However, an otherkin is making, much like the Jesus situation, a claim to be an object that they are not, which we can identify, and
why is woman not an object?
To say, thanks for working to have this conversation.
Why is a woman not an object? You keep saying that, like, you keep delineating between things that are not objects. Why are not women objects?
Because I don't believe that a woman is an object. I don't believe
Why don't you believe that, like, hold on.
I believe it's an identifier.
You describe several people and characterizations as objects.
Yes. I've described, yes, because Jesus is an object in terms of the linguistics that we're discussing.
What do you mean in terms of the linguistics?
Okay, when you refer to, when you asked me, so let me, okay, there's a really good example that people use. I know people have been yelling at me to use this example all the time, but it's about, like, being a fan. Like, how do you define someone who is a fan of the Seahawks, for example, the Seattle Seahawks? Well, they say they're a fan of the Seahawks, and so they are. We don't use socially. We determine a fan of X.
No, I've heard this example too.
Yeah, but it's a perfectly apt example because
not.
Why?
Because then you get into the question of, can someone be a fake Seahawks fan?
Yeah, and I would argue no, that's a silly idea. And the only person who would ever argue that you're a fake fan is on the same level as somebody who would try to invalidate your gender.
No, but
they're obviously being. Of course, it's more cruel to invalidate gender because it's more important.
Right, but I mean, like, this is what we're talking about when we talk about. All right, hold on. We need to get at the concept. We need to get at the core of what a social construct is. Maybe we need to back up a little bit. Okay, do you know what a social construct is, right?
Yes, of course I do.
Okay, a social construct is an idea or a concept that broadly everyone within the given space understands to have either a set number or a general range of characteristics.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, cool.
We mutually agree upon these things.
Okay, a Seahawks fan is going to be socially constructed. There's no, like, you can't go out in nature and just find a Seahawks fan. Like,
you can't go out in nature and find a woman.
Created we as a society socially constructed Seahawks fan.
Yep. You can't go out into nature and find a woman either. It's a purely social construct.
Yes, and I don't disagree with that. But I am saying that social construct does not just mean self-identification.
No, it doesn't. There are different types of social constructs. And gender is, I would argue, one that is most functionally, an understanding of gender that sees gender as a matter of identity is the most functional version of gender and also the most ethical.
No, it's not. It's really not.
I think it is.
All right, we've already agreed.
Well, I mean, you've agreed with me. You've agreed with me almost on all of these points, but then we get to a point where it's like, okay, so then when we try to put all my ideas in a line, then all of a sudden there's something that's missing. So I don't know what's missing here because you haven't contested most of the things that you've been questioning me on here so far.
No, I haven't, because most of the things that we're talking about, you're with me, but just self-identification, all right, is not everything that we have agreed on. We have agreed on more things than just self-identification.
But
like, you acknowledge
for
that, right?
womanhood,
like, we have agreed that there are trans people who have more things going on in their head and in their expressions to society than just self-identification.
I don't think we have, actually. I think we've begun to push into what the difference between being trans and being a woman is. which they are different things because obviously there's multiple types of trans people. But also,
trans is just an umbrella term, but yeah.
Huh?
Trans is just an umbrella term to identify as a gender contrary to the gender that you were assigned at birth.
I agree. Yep, I agree. But I don't think that we've ever moved beyond anything other than like woman is something that you can self-identify as. We haven't contested that.
All right, fine. Then we need to go back to one very important question because I still fundamentally this is.
Well, there's been a lot of important questions, but if you want to,
yes, but we've agreed on most of them, and then we get to a point we get a snag. So I need to figure out what happened. All right, so we go back. Trans person does not know that they are trans.
Sure.
I think of like a very real life example. I mean, like there are plenty of real life examples, but I feel like if I don't ground it heavy enough, then you won't acknowledge it. So all right, let's take I'm trying to construct the first person that's coming to my mind is my roommate, the person who I mentioned earlier in stream.
Okay.
Faith, Emily.
Sure.
All right. She is someone who described to me that for the longest time growing up, right? For the longest time growing up, she had thoughts that made her believe or made her desire to be a girl.
Okay.
But she repressed those desires. She grew up in a conservative household. She grew up in a place which normalized ideas that being in any form LGBT was in no way socially acceptable. And so even if she felt these feelings and recognized their existence without being able to categorize exactly what they were, she suppressed them. Okay?
Yep.
The feelings persisted for a long time.
Yep.
Until she got to such an age where she could not suppress those feelings any longer.
Yes.
The age where she finally comes out and says for the first time, I am a woman, is 25.
Okay.
Up until that point, for the entirety of her life, even though she had known for the vast majority of her life that she had these feelings, she told herself and everyone around her that she was a man, that these feelings were not her being a woman, that these feelings were some nebulous thing that her family was saying that they were, seduction by the devil or impure thoughts or what have you. She knew those things were there, but told both everyone around her and herself that they did not mean she was a woman. Did she lie to herself?
Okay. Did she lie to herself?
Yes.
Now, I think that's a really tough question to answer. Because I think
that is the whole point of this. All right, then let me back up.
Wait, is that the whole point of this? Because that...
I mean, like, it's a very important thing because if she was both internally, as you put it, wrong, and also externally wrong,
well,
then there is something else that's there aside from just her self-identification. Something else.
I think that again, I take contention with the use of the word wrong here because I feel like that's a loaded term. I do. I really do. And again, what you're describing is shockingly similar to my own life because I grew up in a cult and I did not even know the word trans until I was about 19. And the moment I realized that I figured out that I was trans, I experienced an incredible amount of severe backlash from my family. And that also at one point led to me like renouncing my need to transition and throwing my hormones away because I thought I could force myself to like do this. I think we get into murky waters where some of these terms, like some of the words that we use to describe this, stop making sense. Because like, was I lying to myself when I genuinely believed at the time, enough so that I threw out my hormones, when I genuinely believed that throwing my hormones away and forgetting about all this trans stuff would be the best path of action forward to stop the pain that I was experiencing? Was I lying to myself? I don't know. I don't think that's a useful way of describing it. Was I perhaps mistaken about some of the conclusions? Yeah, for sure. Mistaken? Maybe. I don't know if I would say that I was lying to myself. And I think that's kind of there's a moralistic implication of that, right?
Okay, well, hold on. Then we don't need to moralize it.
Sure.
And when you said that to yourself, were you wrong?
Was I wrong? Well, I was wrong about dysphoria going away.
No, I'm not asking. I'm asking if you were wrong about you not being a woman.
I mean, I think I was wrong.
This is a very important question because if the answer is yes, then I'm inclined to agree with you that you are a woman. I've never said that you weren't, and I'm not saying anyone else isn't here. But I'm just saying, if we bite the bullet and you say no, then any feelings that you had internally that cause you the struggle do not matter to whether or not you are the gender that you are. They are irrelevant to your considerations as you're making them.
I don't know. I feel like this is getting really blurry and not particularly clear anymore, because if we're saying that in that moment, if we were to take a snapshot of it and you asked me, 2 days after I threw my hormones out, and whether what I identified as, I would probably tell you that I identified as a man. And at that moment, right. I don't think I would be lying. I think at that moment I would have been telling the truth because that was how I identified. Now, was that actually happy for me? Was that actually, conducive to my happiness? No. And I couldn't quite acknowledge that at the time because I was lacking important information and there were external factors that were pressuring me.
Okay. But why didn't it make you happy? Like, why?
Why didn't it make me happy?
Why didn't identifying as a man make you happy?
Oh, I mean, that's a complicated question, right? Like, that's a really personal and complicated question, right?
Well,
I just thrown my hormones. I could tell you why. I mean, it didn't make me happy because, I have never identified strongly with the gender that was foisted upon me at birth. I've never fit in particularly well with what society decides is what you're supposed to be as a man, and so at that moment, it didn't make me happy because it restrained me because of the assumptions that society places on men, on what are identified as men. That grated on me.
Right, yeah. But why didn't you like those expressions being pushed on you? Like, why?
I mean, for the same reasons that I don't like anything else, right? It's a personal preference at the end of the day. I mean, like, I guess it would be a very intense personal preference, but that's all things, right? Right? Like,
but is it just a personal preference? Like, it's just completely, entirely, singularly personal to you and nobody else. And hold on, I have to make sure I'm getting this right.
I mean, it's
like if you
okay.
Like I just need a reason, like why you didn't like those things? Because my answer is that the reason you didn't like those things is because there are mental processes that we all have that make us more inclined to prefer certain gendered expressions or habits. It's not dysphoria, just the way that we're wired. Some of us have those preferences, and that to some degree, they are baked into us. All right? That's not saying that there's a binary. That's not saying that you need dysphoria, just that like there's something that motivates us so that it's more than just a choice.
Are you trying, like, okay, I don't mean to like answer a question with a question, but what it feels like right now is that you're attempting to justify your own existence, or
I'm not trying to
justify the existence of trans people. And I don't think that our existence needs to be justified.
I'm trying to logically define it.
Logically, define which part? Like,
I'm trying to logically define what gender is.
Gender? I mean, if you want to work from, okay, again, I'm a gender abolitionist. I would love if we could get to a point where we don't even think about gender.
That's not what I'm asking. You can, all right, fine. If you want to get rid of the concept, then fine. I'm just trying to define what it is right now in our society. Not what it should be, not what it should not be, just what it is. Descriptively, not prescriptively.
Descriptively? Oh my God, good luck with that. I wish you great luck on that journey, because you will never have an answer.
I have an answer.
I don't think you do.
Yes, I do.
I don't think you do.
Yes.
I don't believe you. But go ahead.
Why
don't I believe you on why you don't have a descriptive idea for one of the most vaguest and most misunderstood concepts in the world? Yeah.
All right. All right. You want to? All right. Fine. Then the evidence I use. All right. Argument equals evidence, or opinion plus evidence. The reason why is because I base my opinion based on the totality of all the academic literature on what gender is. I've read all the literature on what gender is, and I base it off of what the prevailing academic theories on what gender is.
Okay.
All right. That's why.
Okay. That's great.
Right,
but you do realize that almost no one agrees with you, right?
Literally everyone agrees with me.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
The entirety of society does not agree with you, and just because
the prevailing academic consensus on it does.
No, I really disagree with you. I think you're wrong about that.
If you want, I have all the sources here.
It's perfectly fine. I mean, you can source what an academic definition of gender is, but that does not mean that that is the descriptive claim for what gender is factually. Because
no, I take a scientific realist approach to definitions. You know what scientific realism is?
Yeah, but go ahead and give me your definition of it. Scientific realism is when you basically follow the observable definitions of things within reason, because obviously science is limited.
A scientific realist approach is where a scientific model has no inherent value, but rather is as valuable as it can produce objectively reasonable, consistent, or accurate and consistent outcomes. All right? It's a scientific realist approach. So I take the aggregate of what all the prevailing academic theories on sex are, or on what gender are, all right? All of them, looked at all of them, and I see, all right, what are they all saying that's the same? And based on that, we're able to suss out, based on studies, based on the prevailing academic theories, people are saying that I should have read theory. I can guarantee you I probably read more than you. And I look at what all the theories
say. Are you saying more than me personally? Or were you talking to somebody in chat?
The audience. I'm looking at my audience. Okay. My audience is saying, Riley, read more theory. I trust me, I've read more theory.
I mean, but the fact of the matter though is that like you at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much theory or how little theory that you've read on this particular subject, right? Because at the end of the day, you're synthesizing which similarities between these different sources you've identified, and then you're coming to your own conclusion based on synthesizing these many different sources. And by the way, I don't believe that there is 100% consensus. I've never...
There's overwhelming consensus, yeah.
Everyone agrees with me. Both chats disagree. True. I mean, okay. I mean, I feel like this is I feel like that is a claim that beggars belief.
What do you mean it's beggars belief?
The idea that there is a single consensus on what gender is I don't think that we have
Here,
one.
I'm looking at the American Psychological Association. Sure. We can go through them one by one.
Go for it.
Gender refers to the socially constructed roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes that a given society considers appropriate for boys, men, or girls, and women. These influence the way that people act, interact, and feel about themselves.
Okay.
While aspects of biological sex are similar across different cultures, aspects of gender may differ.
So your definition that you just gave excludes non-binary people.
Yeah, sure. It excludes.
Are you okay with that?
People. No. So I acknowledge the aspects of it which provide scientific realist benefit, and I make sure to not include that which clearly is shown to not produce reasonable, accurate, or consistent outcomes.
Okay. So
and also, like, if you want to just like throw out
but you're literally disagreeing with your own sources.
No,
so this is where I'm saying that you're synthesizing.
Wait, hold on. Do you literally? All right, hold on. Are you about to throw out the American Psychological Association as a credible source? If you are, then
I'm not. I'm just saying that their definition is even flawed, and we can recognize this, and we can point this out. And
yes,
my position does not have a problem with that, but your position does, because you just use them to defend. You just use their definition to defend your position, and then I pointed out that would. Wait a second. I'm talking.
Yeah.
And then I pointed out that would exclude trans people, and then non-binary people, and then you immediately had to reel back your source.
No, I'm not reeling back my source. I've never backpedaled my source. All right. What I want. All right, hold on. Now I need to ask you another question.
Okay. You've had to ask me so many questions, and all of them are of utmost importance. And I'm getting a little bit tired of this of this sort of miasma of inquisition that's been placed over me for the last hour and a half, where every single thing that I say is somehow deeply important to my position as a public creator, but you get to act as some sort of inquisitor who gets to decide that.
Because you're giving a definition of gender which is not based, which has many problems, which I have tried.
I disagree.
The best
and you
of
haven't
my
been
ability.
You haven't been able to point out a single problem with my definition of gender.
Yes, I did. I literally started out by saying that there's an infinite regress, and you just hand wave that aside.
Because
and I tried explaining that.
You pointed out an infinite regress, which I then pointed out is not the case, because it is not. It is not defining as an object. We are defining, in my opinion, gender is a identifier, and identifiers can be declared. You can declare an identifier, just like you can declare yourself a fan of the Seahawks.
But there's more to being a fan of the Seahawks than just declaring that you're a fan of the Seahawks.
No, there isn't, actually. And I don't think there is to being a woman either. I really don't think that there is. I think that you can. I think that you.
No, but literally, you're just I want you to listen to me right now. Literally, I gave the basis that you are giving an infinite regress. You responded with, "Oh, well, I just believe that's not the case." That is not a sufficient rebuttal.
That is not what I said. I provided an argument for why it's not a so-called infinite regress. Yes, and you gave
a bad argument. You gave, "Oh, well, if you just identify as a Seahawk, that makes you a Seahawk
really had
fan."
enough of having this conversation with you, Riley, because listen, what it sounds like to me is that you were really and this is my conclusion and my takeaway from this. I feel like you feel the need to justify your existence as a trans person without and you want to have a 100% definite objective truth, when in reality we're dealing with social constructs and linguistic limitations. And I do realize
you have demonstrated you literally don't know what a construct is.
Excuse me, you literally
don't
interrupted
understand
me.
what a social construct
all right,
is.
I'm done.
No, you're talking down to me.
I am literally done.
You literally are not willing to listen to me whatsoever. I've gone through hours upon hours trying to explain this concept to you.
Okay.
No. Fuck you.
Do I?